Good morning, dear viewers. Welcome to the Junior Minds. My name is Adilo Mika, and today we are at Mother Majeri Primary School, where some pupils will show us some science experiments and lessons. Remember, this is the only show which can make you realize that children have full potential that you cannot believe. Parents, children have the full potential to do whatever it takes to make sure that you don't say that your money was wasted on them. So let's have a look at what they are doing in the school compound. As I told you earlier on in the introduction, we shall have some people showing us different science experiments and lessons. So here with me are some people who are going to take us through the human skeleton.
Hi, my name is Abe Prosi, and I'm from Mother Majeri Day and Boarding Primary School, and I'm going to give you the definition of the human skeleton. A skeleton is a structure that gives the body shape and supports movement. This is the human skeleton. The human skeleton is a framework of bones in the body. The human skeleton is made up of two regions. We have the appendicular and the exoskeleton. The appendicular skeleton is made up of the limbs and the limb girdles. The exoskeleton is made up of the skull, the backbone, and the rib cage. The backbone is made up of 33 bones, and the skull is made up of 22 bones. The entire human skeleton is made up of 206 bones. The longest bone in the human skeleton is the femur. Allow me to introduce my friend to talk about the functions of the human skeleton.
Thank you, Abe Prosim. My name is Arisa Pal, and I'm here to take you through the functions of different parts of the skeleton. First of all, the skull protects our brain, the lower jaw protects the tongue, the backbone protects the spinal cord, the rib cage protects the heart and the lungs, and the pelvis protects the reproductive organs and the urinary bladder. Otherwise, the human skeleton is important. It gives the body shape, it helps in body movement, helps in muscle attachment, and also helps in formation of blood cells in the bone marrow. Different diseases that affect the skeleton. There is polio that affects our limbs, rickets that affects the limbs making them to bend, tetanus that affects our muscles, and finally tuberculosis that affects the backbone. Different ways of caring for our skeletons. We should eat a balanced diet. We should also eat foodstuffs rich in calcium to make our bones strong. We should immunize infants against tuberculosis, tetanus, and polio. And finally, we should boil animal milk before drinking to prevent the spread of tuberculosis. Thank you for listening.
Wow, that was a very interesting explanation. Abe Prosi, as you said earlier on, that the longest bone in the body is the femur. I'd like to pose a question, and that question is, what is the shortest bone in the body?
Thank you, moderator. There are 3 bones in the human ear, and the name given to the 3 bones in the human ear are the ossicles. Among the ossicles, we have the stapes, which is the smallest bone in the human skeleton. Thank you.
That was interesting. Arisa, as you said, the diseases of the human skeleton. There is polio, rickets, and tuberculosis, and plus tetanus. But can you outline some of the disorders of the skeleton?
Thank you, dear moderator. Well, there are mainly 4 disorders that affect the skeleton. There is a fracture, where a bone breaks in the body. There is a strain, which is a torn or overstretched muscle. Then there is a sprain, which is a torn or overstretched ligament. And finally, there is a dislocation, where the bone gets out of its normal position. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you so much, Abe Prosi and Arisa Pal, for that explanation about the human skeleton. Let's move on to another group of people who will show us another experiment. Remember, you're still watching Junior Minds, where you realize children have full potential that you can't believe. As you heard from the first group which took us through the human skeleton, here with me is the second group which is going to take us through first aid. So, before you introduce yourselves, what's first aid?
My name is Noreen and I'm going to explain to you the definition of first aid. First aid is the immediate help given to a casualty before being taken to the nearest health center. A casualty is a person who has gotten an injury.
Thank you for that wonderful explanation. So, can you take us through the items they used to give first aid?
My name is Trefin Chantal and I'll be taking you through the examples of first aid tools and their uses. Now let's begin with the gloves. The gloves are used to reduce the risks of infections when giving first aid to casualties, for example, HIV, AIDS and hepatitis B, which can be spread through contact with infected blood. Then we have the disinfectants like the methylated spirit, the surgical spirit, the hydrogen peroxide, and the iodine solution, which are all used for cleaning and disinfecting wounds or disinfecting medical instruments like scissors. Then we have the plasters, which are used for dressing wounds or cuts. Then we have the painkillers. The painkillers are used to reduce pain in case of an injury which causes a lot of pain. Then we have the safety pins. The safety pins are used for pinning bandages or gauze. Then we have the gauze. The gauze is used for cleaning wounds or to stop bleeding in case of too much bleeding. Then we have the bandages, which are used for dressing wounds or tying around splints when giving first aid for a fracture. Then we have the scissors. The scissors are used for cutting bandages or gauze when giving first aid. Then we have the tourniquet. The tourniquet is used to stop bleeding. Now let me demonstrate how it is used.
Here's the mark.
Now if this is a cut and this is the pressure point, we tie exactly at the pressure point. Then we tighten it like that. Then like if this is the cut, then the bleeding will stop. Then we have the arm sling, which is used to keep the broken arm motionless. What I mean by motionless is it keeps it in one position, and this is how it is used. Now let's imagine that this is her broken arm. Now the broken arm is kept in one position. Now it can heal quicker. Now let me take you to my friend Audrey, who's going to take you through the first aid for a fracture.
Thank you, Trefin. My name is Audrey Ranam and I'm going to take you through the first aid for a fracture. A fracture is a broken or cracked bone in the body. We have three types of fractures: a simple fracture, a compound fracture, and a green stick fracture. A simple fracture is a fracture where the broken bone remains in the flesh, while a compound fracture, the broken bone comes out of the flesh. Then a green stick fracture is where the bone just bends. And a green stick fracture is common in young children because they have soft bones. Now I'm going to demonstrate to you the first aid for a fracture. So we shall get splints. We shall put splints around the broken parts, keep it in one position. Then we shall tie bandage around the splints. You have to make the bandage tight. After this, we can cut the bandage. Then we shall use the safety pins to fasten the bandage.
There. And then this is the first aid for a fracture. Now the broken arm is kept motionless. Thank you for listening to us.
We are pupils from Mother Majeri Primary School, and our school motto is Run a Race to Win.
As I told you earlier on, this is the only show where you can believe that children have potential that you can't even believe. First of all, went to the human skeleton. I myself, I even didn't know how many bones on my body till now. Ask yourself that question. How many bones did you have in the body before you watched this? And from the human skeleton, we went to first aid. First of all, first aid has helped me and you in many ways. Take an example. You're climbing a tree and you fall down. What do you use? Don't you give yourself first aid? Sometimes you put salt, which I don't recommend you to use because it will dehydrate all the water that is in that wound. So use things like surgical spirit, which are and bandages in case you got a fracture. You've heard there are three major types of fractures: compound, simple, and green stick. Green stick commonly occurs in young children because they have soft bones. And for that reason, I'd like you to stay tuned to this show and learn more, because where that came from, there's a whole lot more that is coming. Let's go for a commercial break and shall be right back.